2.8 billion jars of pasta sauce leave American shelves every year. More than 5,000 varieties. A $2.5 billion aisle. In 1983, that number was 720 million from two brands, one flavor each. Smooth, thin, sweet. But here is something that might surprise you. That explosion from two brands to 5,000 did not happen gradually. It started when one psychophysicist made 45 sauces nobody asked for, fed them to thousands of strangers, and found that 1/3 of the country had been craving a product no company had ever thought to sell. In 1937, Giovanni and Assunta Cantisano started making tomato sauce in their basement in Rochester, New York. Italian immigrants. Tomatoes from their own garden. Recipe from the old country. They sold jars door to door under the name Ragu. Within 2 decades, it was in supermarkets nationwide. By the late 1960s, Ragu owned 65% of the American pasta sauce market. One jar, one style. Thin, smooth, sweet. Nobody questioned it. Then something else happened. In 1981, Campbell's launched Prego to compete head-on with Ragu. And Prego was objectively better, thicker, richer. In the bowl test, a side-by-side comparison, where both sauces sit on pasta, Prego clung to the noodle while Ragu slid to the bottom. Campbell's engineers had figured out how to keep the sauce from separating in the jar, no added starch, no artificial thickeners, so it stayed thick on the noodle from plate to mouth. In blind taste tests, Prego won almost every round. But Prego still could not beat Ragu on the shelf. Brand loyalty and grocery habit outweighed flavor. Shoppers reached for the jar they recognized, not the jar that tasted better. By the mid-1980s, Prego's growth had flatlined completely. Campbell's had a product that won every taste test and lost every sales battle. They needed an entirely different way of thinking about sauce. Here is the thing nobody tells you. Trucks arrive at the factory carrying between 20 and 40 tons of Roma tomatoes each. The clock starts the moment they pull in. Fresh tomatoes spoil fast. Every hour of delay means the sauce tastes different at the end of the line. Most plants process incoming loads within 6 hours of arrival. The first machine is a flume, a long channel of circulating water that carries the fruit forward while rinsing off field dirt. From there, a steam blancher hits them at roughly 95 degrees Celsius for 60 to 90 seconds. The heat loosens the skin without cooking the flesh. A mechanical peeler strips it off in one pass. Peeled tomatoes drop onto a conveyor and pass through optical sorters cameras paired with lasers scanning at tens of thousands of pounds per hour. Green, damaged, or undersized fruit gets rejected by a burst of compressed air. Then comes the step that splits the entire category. For smooth sauce, tomatoes pass through a pulper finisher, a rotating drum with fine perforations that separates seeds from flesh and pushes pure puree through the screen. For chunky sauce, a coarser mill breaks the fruit into irregular pieces and leaves them intact. But keeping those pieces intact at factory scale requires calcium chloride. In a lab, small batches stay chunky with gentle heat. At 5,000 kilograms per cycle under industrial pressure, the pieces disintegrate. Calcium chloride keeps the pieces firm without it. They turn to mush within weeks on the shelf. With it, they hold shape for 18 months. Without it, chunky sauce does not exist. The base goes into jacketed kettles, double-walled steel vats holding thousands of liters. Olive oil, garlic, onion, salt, sugar, basil, oregano, parsley. Cook temperature runs between 88 and 95 degrees Celsius for 30 to 60 minutes. Too short and flavors never meld. Too long and sugars caramelize into bitterness. Sauce fills into glass jars at roughly 85 degrees Celsius and seals under vacuum immediately. As it cools, steam condenses. The space inside shrinks, and the lid gets pulled down tight. That pop, when you twist the cap, is not decoration. It is proof the vacuum held from factory to kitchen. Final sterilization. Hot fill jars get inverted, so the sauce pasteurizes the lid. Retort jars enter a pressure cooker at 121 degrees Celsius. Tomatoes are naturally acidic enough that heat alone kills the bacteria. No preservatives needed. 18 to 24 months at room temperature. No refrigeration. That is it. Tomatoes, heat, acid, time, glass, vacuum. That process was already running when Prego hit the market. The sauce was better than Ragu. The sales were not. So Campbell's brought in Howard Moskowitz, not a chef, a psychophysicist Harvard-trained, 7 years optimizing rations for the United States Army. He said 6 words, "What you have is a dead tomato society." Moskowitz built 45 variations of Prego adjusting sweetness, garlic, tartness, salt, thickness, herbs, chunk size, and fed them to thousands of Americans across the country. The data did not produce one winner. It produced 3 clusters. 1/3 preferred plain, 1/3 preferred spicy, and 1/3 wanted something no company sold, extra chunky. Prego launched Extra Chunky, $600 million in its first 10 years. Here is where the story flips. Italian culinary tradition has one rule about tomato sauce: you pass it through a food mill. Smooth, no seeds, no skin, no chunks. Every American brand followed that rule because the recipe came from Italy and nobody questioned it. Moskowitz was not Italian. He was not a chef. He had no loyalty to the food mill. So when 1/3 of his test subjects kept choosing the sauce with visible tomato pieces, he did not throw the data out. He reported it. The industry had not been ignoring consumer demand on purpose. It had been following a tradition that nobody thought to test against actual American taste. The food mill was never a rule. It was a habit dressed up as one. Try this. Next time you stand in the pasta sauce aisle, count the options. Then walk to the mustard section. In 1983, 2 mustards, yellow and brown. Today there are 14. Grey Poupon broke the monopoly by doing exactly what Prego did, offering a version nobody knew they wanted until they tasted it. Walk to the vinegar shelf. 1 variety became 7. Same method, same decade. Every aisle reorganized after Moskowitz proved that the problem was never the recipe, it was the assumption that one version could serve everyone. One caveat: more variety also gave manufacturers more room to engineer around the bliss point the ratio of salt, sugar, and fat that keeps you reaching for the jar. Segmentation gave consumers options. It also gave companies more surface area to optimize. There is no perfect pasta sauce. There are only perfect pasta sauces. Nobody hid that from you. For 50 years, the industry asked consumers what they wanted, heard smoother and more Italian, and never once handed them a spoon to decide for themselves. A jar of tomatoes, a vacuum seal, and one man who saw a dead tomato society and brought it back by accepting that every mouth is different. That is the process. We reveal how things actually work, one story at a time. If there is something you would like us to explore next, let us know. Until then, trust the process.